Hi, beautiful people. Welcome to the Fort Salem Library, where we read you your fanfiction. So sit down or don't, relax or don't, and enjoy these stories in a way you have not before. We at Fort Salem Library do not own Motherland Fort Salem or any of the related characters. The Motherland Fort Salem series is created by Elliot Lawrence and owned by Freeform. This story is a work of fanfiction and is meant for entertainment only. We are not making any profit from these stories. All rights of the original Motherland Fort Salem story belong to Freeform. We also do not own To Take Care of You or any of its original characters and storylines. We did, however, get permission from the author to read their story. This story was created and written by Lisbeth_1, and you can find the link in our show notes. This story is being read to you by Celine.
To Take Care of You, Chapter 3. So, where's Sarah taking you for your birthday? Tally shrugged from her position on Rael's bed, watching her two sisters pick up stray wrapping paper and empty paper plates from the small birthday party they had thrown her earlier in the evening. I don't know. She watched as Abigail picked up an empty wine bottle and shook it lightly, confirming that it was actually empty, before tossing it into the trash. She won't tell me. All I know is that we're leaving stupid early so we can get wherever we're going at a decent time. You must really love her if you're willing to wake up early for her, Rael teased. She does know you're a horrible grump in the mornings, right? Like, if you have to wake up before 5 a.m., you're basically not even human anymore. I know, and she's seen that, which I think means she must really love me, Telly teased back, and Rael snorted. Telly glanced over at the clock on Rael's bedside table and sighed, stretching out her stiff muscles. Thanks for the party and the gifts, but I should probably get going. I want to try to get as much sleep as I can before the crazy morning person, known as my girlfriend, decides to wake me up before the sun has even risen. Oh, Tell, wait! Abigail threw the bag of trash onto the ground as Telly slid off the bed. Ray and I actually have one more gift for you. Really? Telly looked back and forth between her sisters, brow furrowing. Why didn't you give it to me when we were opening all the other gifts? Abigail bit her lip to hold back a smile, and turned, ducking under her bed to pull out a rectangular box, covered in wrapping paper, and tied together with a ribbon, as Rael wandered over to stand next to both of them, a smile of her own tugging at her lips. We figured you wouldn't want to open this kind of gift in front of Em and Gregorio, Rael said, and Telly's frown deepens, glancing at the box. You would probably be pretty embarrassed. Like, more embarrassed than you were that time my mom walked in on you and Sarah making out, Abigail said, and Rael snickered as Telly's face heated up at the memory. What kind of gift is it? She asked suspiciously, trying to change the subject, eyeing the box like it might jump out of Abigail's hands and harm her. It's a gag gift, Rael said, and Abigail shot her an exasperated look. It is not. It is. Okay, it isn't. Well, sorta. What the hell are you two talking about? Telly butted in, and Rael ducked her head, a much larger smile erupting onto her face. Here, Abigail thrust the box into Telly's hand. What is it? Telly asked warily, turning the box in her hand, shaking it lightly. When it made no noise, she slid the ribbon off of it, letting it fall onto the floor. Her sisters could pick it up later. Something that you can use, Rael said, finally lifting her head as Telly began to slowly tear the wrapping paper apart. Or Sarah, Abigail pointed out, and Rael nodded quickly, agreeing. She could wear it too. Rael coughed. Telly's fingers froze, with the wrapping paper halfway off of the box, eyes darting back and forth between her sisters. Wait, is this something you use or something that you wear? Both, Abigail said with a confident shake of her head. It's definitely both. Curiosity got the better of Tally, and she turned back to the box, ripping the paper off of it the rest of the way, until she was left with an unmarked white box in her hand. She cast one final glance at her two sisters, both of them trying, and failing, to hold back shit-eating grins, and she lifted the lid of the box. "Oh, you guys," Tally said, face instantly awash with flames. "What the hell am I supposed to do with this?" She looked up at them both in a sort of desperate helplessness, and Raelle coughed loudly into the crook of her arm, trying to cover up a laugh. "Well, I'm no expert," Abigail drawled, "but I'm pretty sure that this bit—" Abigail reached out, picking up the leather harness that was folded neatly in the box. "Goes around your hips, and this bit—" Abigail's other hand grabbed the 6-inch purple dildo that was still resting in the box and held it up, along with the harness. "Goes into this thing somehow." "That thing," Raelle interjected, "is called a harness." "Whatever." Abigail rolled her eyes before settling them onto Tally. "Surely I don't need to explain to you what a strap-on is, right, Tal?" "I know what a strap-on is," Tally instantly defended herself. "If you didn't, I'm sure Sarah would be more than willing to give you a thorough explanation." Raelle wiggled her eyebrows. "I believe the word you're looking for is demonstration," Abigail corrected her, placing the harness and the dildo back into the box, and Tally felt her blush spread from her cheeks to her chest. "You guys seriously got me a strap-on for my birthday?" "What?" Abigail widened her eyes almost innocently. "You don't want it?" "I didn't say that," Tally said a touch too quickly, eyes widening slightly, and Raelle wheezed loudly next to her. "Just how the hell am I supposed to show this to Sarah? Just be like, 'Hey honey, want to try out this new toy I got you? Oh, where did you get it? Oh, my sister's got it for me.'" "You call her honey?" Abigail wrinkled her nose slightly, and Tally huffed in exasperation. "I call her Sarah," Tally said. "That's not the point." "We're not saying that you guys have to use it, Tally," Raelle quickly cut in. "That's why it's partly a gag gift, okay? Like, we totally get that it might be a little weird for her to—" Raelle glanced at the dildo. "With something that we bought for you. By the way, it was totally weird paying for this thing with money that had Sarah's face stamped all over it, considering who we were buying it for," Abigail interrupted. "Weird?" Raelle asked, arching a brow. "Or funny? 'Cause you took one look at that bill with her face on it and couldn't stop laughing. I had to practically carry you out of that store." "Mostly weird." "Okay, mostly funny," Abigail conceded with a barely held back laugh, before reaching out and poking Tally in the ribs. "But Raelle's right, we did get it mostly as a joke. We're not gonna be heartbroken if you don't use it." "And actually," Raelle said hurriedly, frown lines appearing on her face, "don't tell us if you do. It's still a little weird to hear about you having sex with the general." "So, it's weird to hear about it, yet you buy me a literal sex toy," Tally deadpanned. "Yes," Raelle nodded vigorously. "At least this way I can pretend it's a gag gift that will never be used." "Right," Abigail rolled her eyes. "You keep telling yourself that, Ray." Sarah had tried to go to sleep. She really had, but it was always something that seemed next to impossible without the comforting presence of Tally in the bed next to her. And the very moment she had finally started to drift off, a wave of embarrassment had rolled through the link from Tally, strong enough to make Sarah's skin prickle and the backs of her ears itch. She had almost gotten out of bed to make sure that everything was all right, but it had disappeared almost as quickly as it had taken over her, and so she had stayed. The bedroom door opened not even 20 minutes later, and Sarah sat up in bed, reaching over to turn on the bedside lamp, and Tally jumped. "Goddess!" Tally placed a hand over her heart as she set down a large bag of what Sarah assumed were her birthday gifts. "I thought you were sleeping." "I was trying, at any rate." Sarah watched Tally toe off her shoes, wriggling her way out of jeans. "It's hard when you're not around." Tally expertly removed her bra from underneath her shirt and hopped onto the bed with Sarah in only her underwear and t-shirt. I know the feeling. She crawled onto Sarah's lap, straddling her waist as she ran her hands down Sarah's arms. Now here's the new side. And what's that? You're in one of my shirts for once. Tally looked Sarah up and down, appreciatively, as Sarah glanced down at the shirt she had taken from Tally's drawer earlier that night. A black t-shirt bearing the logo of a fictional superhero that Sarah couldn't quite remember the name of. I finally get why you always like seeing me in your clothing so much. Well, what can I say? Sarah looked back up at Tally, hands sliding around to rest in the small of her back. This shirt smells like you, and I missed you. Tally's nose wrinkled with a grin, hands settling on Sarah's hips. I was only gone for 5 hours. Yes, Sarah nodded with mock seriousness, and what a terrible 5 hours they were. Tally's grin widened before leaning in to kiss Sarah, short and sweet, the type of kiss they had done countless times before, and would no doubt do countless times more. I missed you too. You had fun with your friends, though? Sarah asked as Tally sat up straight again. Yeah. Good. Sarah smiled softly at Tally for a brief moment. And what was it that made you so embarrassed? Tally's smile froze on her face. Oh, she choked out, a pink coloring appearing on her cheeks. You felt that? I did, Sarah said gently. If you don't want to tell me, that's perfectly okay, she said quickly. I just want to make sure that everything's all right. Tally let out a drawn-out groan, body going boneless in Sarah's arms as she flopped forward to rest her forehead on Sarah's shoulder. Tally, love, what in the name of the goddess is the matter? Sarah was torn between feeling amused and feeling concerned, reaching up to tug ever so slightly on Tally's long hair, coaxing her back up into a sitting position. Is something wrong? Nothing's wrong, Tally chewed on her lip nervously, looking shyly at Sarah in a way that Sarah hadn't seen since Tally, red-faced and unable to meet Sarah's gaze, had asked if she could bend Sarah over her own desk and fuck her from behind. Care to enlighten me? Riel and Abigail got me a gag gift, Tally finally said, hands no longer on Sarah's hips, but fidgeting in her lap, the way they always did when she was nervous. Oh. Tally's teeth sunk a little deeper into her lower lip. Got us a gag gift? One of Sarah's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rose. Oh. Tally nodded, a flush rising to her cheeks. That's why I got so embarrassed. May I see what it is? Tally finally met Sarah's steady gaze, eyes widening just the slightest. You want to see it? Only if you're comfortable with showing it to me. Sarah ran a soothing hand down Tally's hair, her back, feeling Tally squirm lightly on her lap. Judging by your reaction, I have a feeling I already know what it is, but I would like to see it for myself, if that's all right with you. Okay, Tally mumbled in concedence, and she clambered off of Sarah's lap, leaning down over the edge of the bed to reach inside the giant bag of gifts, pulling out the unmarked white box. She sat back up, face burning ever so slightly, as she thrust the box into Sarah's lap. Here. Sarah didn't say anything as she lifted the lid off the box, setting it down on the bed between her and Tally, taking in the sight of what lay in the box before lifting her head to look at Tally with a slightly amused expression. I figured it was something like this. Tally flushed again as Sarah glanced down at the box in her hands. I'm assuming I'm correct in thinking that you have never used one of these before, Sarah asked. No, Tally managed to get out. She looked over at Sarah. Have you? Her voice was just a touch too high. Yes, Sarah nodded. I have ended my fair share of Beltanes with women. Most of them, in fact. Oh. Something seemed to occur to Telly, and a slow frown began to mar her features as Sarah continued to inspect the toy. Hey, Sarah. Yes, my love. Have you participated in every single Beltane since you came of age? Not every single one, Sarah said mildly. There were plenty of times when I was away at war, or simply did not feel like attending. But most of them, Telly prodded, and Sarah finally looked up at her, frowning. Yes, Sarah said slowly, setting the box down on the other side of the bed and shifting in place so that she was facing Telly. Yes, most of them. She eyed Telly carefully, noting the way her hands were once again fidgeting in her lap, eyes downcast as she stared at the bedsheets beneath them. Is that a problem? No, Telly said instantly, and her eyes snapped up to look at Sarah, eyes wide. No, that's not a problem at all, A fresh rush of color flooded her cheeks, and Sarah reached out, covering Telly's nervous hands with her own. What is it? It's just that, well, sex with you is the best sex I've ever had, Telly blurted out, and a flicker of surprise flitted over Sarah's face before being replaced by a smirk. Don't be smug, Telly bit out, and Sarah did her best to school her features. Apologies, darling. Do go on. But you're also only the second person that I've ever slept with, Telly continued quietly. It just didn't occur to me until now that over the hundreds of years that you've been alive, because of Beltane, that you would have had hundreds of sexual partners. That's right, Sarah said, not quite understanding what Telly was getting at. Well then, I guess sex with me must be pretty mediocre compared to some of the people you've been with, huh? Telly said weakly, a light grimace on her face as she looked at Sarah, and Sarah once again felt a wave of embarrassment roll through her from Telly, feeling her own heart break at Telly's words. Oh, my love, Sarah said, as softly as she could, squeezing Telly's hands tightly in her own. How could you possibly ever think that? Telly's eyes dropped to the bed once again, returning Sarah's grip tightly as she did so. I don't know, she mumbled. I'm still inexperienced with some stuff, and all I ever want to do is make you feel as good as you make me feel, but... Telly was cut off with a yelp, as Sarah suddenly sat forward, grabbing Telly by the thighs and dragging her forward, pressing her down so that Telly's back was flat against the mattress, Sarah hovering over her, unbraided dark hair spilling over one shoulder. Listen to me, my love, Sarah said, her tone of voice clear that there would be no arguing with her, and Telly swallowed, nodding quickly. I have had sex with lots of people, yes, but that's all it ever was, just sex. It never meant anything, not like it does with you. Sarah's expression softened, and some of the embarrassment currently causing Telly's body to burn faded away. Sex with you, Telly, is everything. You are everything, Sarah corrected herself, and that's why being with you, in any regard, is incomparable to anything and anyone else. Do you understand? Telly squirmed lightly from underneath Sarah, biting her lip as a bashful yet hopeful smile grew on her face. So, I'm the best you've ever had? She asked, and Sarah laughed, low and raspy, leaning down to nuzzle into Telly's neck with her nose, her lips, her teeth. Yes, darling, Sarah said, pressing a series of kisses to Telly's neck and jaw, and Telly laughed in response, bright and loud, fingertips digging into Sarah's back. Okay, she said, as Sarah pulled back, just enough so they could look at each other properly. Telly blew some of her hair out of her face, Sarah wrinkling her nose slightly as Telly's breath tickled her cheek, and Telly brought both of her hands up to cup Sarah's face. Sorry for getting all weird and insecure there, Telly grimaced again, and Sarah's only response was to lean down again and wipe it off her face with a kiss that stole the breath from Telly's lungs, leaving her panting and helpless underneath Sarah, heat curling in her stomach. Sarah pulled away, slightly out of breath herself, and she tossed a glance over her shoulder at the box that still held the strap on, before looking back to Telly, with darkened eyes. "So, about that gift you got," she began, and Telly's breath hitched in her throat. "Think you'll ever be interested in using it?" She sounded far too casual to be asking Telly if she wanted to be fucked with a strap-on, and Telly's throat went dry, thighs involuntarily clenching from where she lay pinned underneath Sarah. "How about right now?" Telly responded immediately, and Sarah grinned down at her before pushing herself off of Telly and turning around to grab the box. After a split second, Telly sat up as well, hand darting out to grab Sarah's arm. "On one condition." Sarah frowned lightly, turning back around. "And what would that be?" Telly shot forward, taking Sarah by surprise as it was her turn to pin the older woman to the bed, grabbing both of her arms and holding them above her head. Sarah's eyes were wider than Telly had ever seen them, chest heaving lightly as she stared up at Telly in shock and awe. Telly applied the slightest bit of pressure to Sarah's hips with her own, rolling them in the way she knew that Sarah liked so much, and a sharp gasp left Sarah's mouth as Telly leaned down to gently scrape her teeth along the column of Sarah's throat, right along her vocal cords, before pulling back and grinning widely. "I get to wear it first."
Please find the fanfiction you just listened to on Archive of Our Own and leave the author some love. Without them, this wouldn't be possible, and we want to thank them from the bottoms of our hearts for creating these amazing stories and keeping the show alive.